The doctor's hands were shaking. I watched her look at my file, not the ultrasound screen where my baby's heartbeat flickered in black and white. Her eyes were glued to the paper, to my husband's name printed clearly at the top. Suddenly, she turned off the screen in the middle of the exam, as if she had cut the power to my life. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I need to speak with you alone right now." She led me to her office, closed the door, and locked it. I thought something was wrong with the baby. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My ears were ringing and I couldn't breathe properly. Then she said something that left me cold. "You have to leave your husband today before you go home, and first get a divorce lawyer." I laughed. It was a short, absurd laugh, as if my body was trying to defend reality from an impossible sentence. "What? Why? We're having a baby. We're fine. I don't understand." "That's exactly the problem," she said, her face pale. "What I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about your marriage." My name is Lacey. I'm 32 years old and work as a marketing director at a specialized firm. I come from what educated people call an old money family. I never liked that label, but I learned that it matters more to others than it should. My grandmother, Vivian, passed away 5 years ago and left me a trust fund of about 48 million pesos, along with the historic family home where generations of women in my family lived, loved, and raised their children. I never showed it off. I worked hard for my career. I lived a simple life with an old car, the same coffee every day, and the same routine to feel normal. The inheritance was security, not my identity, but it made me a target. I just didn't know it yet. I met Sterling 4 years ago at my family's annual charity gala in Mexico City. I was at the bar trying to escape a man who, just minutes after meeting me, wanted to talk about investments, properties, and estate planning. That's when Sterling appeared. Tall, with an easy smile and perfect manners. He asked me what I was drinking, made a joke about the band playing in the background, and instead of asking about money, he asked me about books. He said he was a financial advisor and was invited at the last minute. He claimed not to know my family. Over time, I realized that was a red flag. A financial advisor who attends a major gala and doesn't know who the host family isn't carefree. He's pretending. But I was tired of obvious people, of smiles that only shined when they heard numbers. And that night, Sterling seemed different. We dated for a year. He was attentive, thoughtful, and charming. He remembered small things, like how I liked my sweet bread and which flowers gave me allergies. He paid for dinners, even when I didn't ask him to, saying he liked taking care of me. I mistook it for tenderness. My mom, Vivian, saw through him from the first meeting. As soon as he left, she pulled me aside. "That smile doesn't reach his eyes," she told me. "Something is wrong with him, Lacey. I can feel it." I was offended. I told her she was exaggerating, that she was paranoid and overprotective. We argued about it so many times that we ended up barely speaking for 2 years. Just birthday messages and short congratulations, nothing more. I chose to believe my boyfriend and later my husband over my own mother. We got married at the family home. Everything was beautiful. Sterling cried during his vows, tears streaming down his face as he promised to love and protect me forever. I saw him cry and thought, I'm so lucky. Today, I know those weren't tears of emotion. They were tears of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, as if he had finally reached the finish line. It took us 2 years to get pregnant. We tried everything: calendars, lifestyle changes, hope, and exhaustion. We ended up with a fertility specialist. The diagnosis hit like a stone: severe infertility on Sterling's part. His count was almost non-existent. Conceiving naturally was practically impossible. Sterling fell apart. He cried in the car, apologizing over and over as if it were a moral failure. I held him and told him we would figure it out together, that this was what marriage was about. At that moment, I didn't know he wasn't crying out of pain. He was crying because his plan had become complicated. We decided to do in vitro fertilization. Sterling insisted on choosing the clinic. He said he would do the research, that he wanted the best and didn't trust just any place. He took care of all the paperwork. Exhausted, I was grateful. He seemed like such a dedicated husband. The first attempt failed. I was devastated. I had invested so much hope, time, and emotion. I didn't get out of bed for days. Sterling held me close, whispering that we would try again, that everything would be okay. The second attempt, a little over 4 months ago, worked. A positive test. 2 little lines that changed everything. I cried with happiness. Sterling hugged me and started talking about the future, names, nursery colors, plans. Then he casually mentioned that it would be a good idea to update my will now that we were starting a family. I thought it was practical, even sweet. I never imagined that in his mind the trust fund already had his name on it. At 4 months pregnant, something shifted. It wasn't a direct blow, but a change in the air. My home was still my home, but it felt different. Sterling started placing his phone face down everywhere. He changed his password, stepped out to take calls, and came back acting tense, as if my questions were an intrusion. He said they were work matters, urgent cases. He began coming home late several nights a week, too many for someone who doesn't save lives in an emergency room. I found receipts for expensive dinners for 2 at places he had never taken me, a hotel near our house. Why would he need a hotel so close? When I asked, he had quick, rehearsed answers, and if I pushed, his tone would change. "Lacey, you're being paranoid. It's the hormones. Pregnant women get irrational. Don't turn into that kind of wife." He said it with a cruel calmness, as if my intuition were a symptom, not an alarm. He made me feel guilty for doubting him. He would apologize, and I, tired and afraid of breaking my perfect family, would end up apologizing too. Then came the pressure about my money. It wasn't a serious, adult conversation, but small, repeated bites, each one bolder than the last. "You should add me as a beneficiary to the trust fund. What if something happens to you during childbirth? I'll need to access funds for the baby. We need power of attorney. It's common sense. All couples do it. Your grandmother's house is too big. We should sell it and put that money to work. I know exactly where." I refused. At first gently, then firmly. As soon as I said no, his warmth vanished. He became cold and distant, sleeping on the far edge of the bed. He said I moved too much because of the pregnancy. Fights started over anything and everything, and when I was too tired to argue, he would punish me with silence that lasted for days. He also stopped touching me, disguising it as care. "I don't want to hurt the baby," he would say. It sounded considerate, but it felt like rejection. When I tried to talk about it, he called me needy, hormonal, and difficult. For the first time in my life, I began to wonder if I was the problem. One morning, very early, I heard him in the kitchen. It was late, and the world outside was quiet. I walked slowly and saw him hunched over his phone, speaking in a low voice. "Almost there," he was saying. "By spring, everything will be sorted out." He hung up when he saw me. "Work emergency," he said. "Go back to sleep, love." I didn't ask the questions I should have. I was tired, scared, and clinging to the idea that my marriage was still fine. My friend Autumn came over for lunch a few days later. She listened to me justify everything, his pressure, his fear of being a father. At one point, she put down her fork and looked at me as if she could no longer pretend. "Lacey, listen to yourself," she said. "When was the last time you spoke to your mom without your pride getting in the way? And when was the last time Sterling was genuinely happy to see you without acting for anyone?" I didn't know how to answer. That night, I understood that my intuition wasn't exaggerating. It was asking for help. At my checkup and ultrasound, my regular doctor wasn't there, so Dr. Coral saw me instead. Everything was normal. The cold gel, the baby's movement, the routine questions, until she opened my file, saw my husband's name, and froze. Her hands began to shake. She turned off the screen. "Mrs. Sterling," she whispered, "I need to speak with you alone right now." I thought the worst about the baby. In seconds, my mind filled with tragedies, but Dr. Coral took me to her office and carefully closed the door. "I know what your husband did, and I have proof," she said, taking a folder from her drawer. "My younger sister, Autumn, works at the fertility clinic where you were treated. A few weeks ago, she came to my house crying. She told me everything. When I saw your husband's name in your file, I recognized it." Inside the folder were original records, emails, and receipts. Sterling had bribed Autumn and an embryologist to switch his sample for a donor's. He paid Autumn around 600,000 pesos. The donor, Nolan, a 28-year-old graduate student, was given about 300,000 pesos. Nolan thought it was a private arrangement. When he learned the truth, he was furious and agreed to cooperate. The air left my lungs. My pregnancy, my baby, my joy. It was all built on a deliberate deception. Dr. Coral continued with a calmness that didn't reach her hands. The plan was precise and monstrous. After the birth, Sterling planned to alter the records to make it seem like the fertility cycle had failed and that we had then conceived naturally. He would then suggest a DNA test in a sweet tone, like a keepsake to frame. When it showed he wasn't the biological father, something he already knew, he would accuse me of infidelity. Our prenuptial agreement had an infidelity clause. If he could prove I had cheated, he would seek a penalty of several million pesos, strip me of rights to my assets, and sue for emotional damages. I would be the guilty one, he the victim. And there was more. Dr. Coral told me that on her own, she found that Sterling had gambling debts of over 3 million pesos. Work trips were actually for gambling. He owed money to lenders who weren't known for their patience. He got the bribe money by embezzling funds from his clients at his firm, hiding it in small transactions to avoid suspicion. He wasn't an overworked husband, he was a desperate, drowning man, willing to destroy me to save himself and take what was mine in the process. I sat there, looking at the papers. First came the shock, cold and paralyzing. Then denial, that absurd need to find a mistake that would fix everything. But there was no mistake. As I read, my story was rewritten in dark ink. The gala was not a coincidence. The tears at the wedding were not for love. His insistence on choosing the clinic wasn't care, it was control. Then something settled inside me, a calm as hard as stone. "He doesn't know that I know," I said to Dr. Coral. "No," she replied. "My sister didn't tell anyone. I only connected the dots today when I saw your file. I need copies of everything, and I need to speak with Autumn." My hand went to my belly. My baby was innocent. I already loved him. I would not let Sterling turn my child into a weapon. I went home with a neutral face. I smiled, hugged him, and said everything was perfect. I showed him the ultrasound picture. I apologized for my paranoia, using the same word he had used to humiliate me. I watched him relax, convinced he was still in control. That night, he slept peacefully. I didn't sleep. I planned. The next day, I found a private investigator, Georgia, a former detective. I chose her because her gaze didn't ask for permission. I told her everything. She wasn't shocked. She just took notes. When I finished, she said, "Your husband made mistakes. Men who think they're untouchable always do. I'll handle it." In a few days, she confirmed the rest. Gambling debts, embezzlement, and an affair with his assistant. Dinners, hotels, messages, charges. Nothing was ambiguous. She also found a prior incident. Years ago, Sterling had tried the same thing with another wealthy woman. She, Georgia, agreed to testify. She said she had stayed silent out of shame, but she no longer owed him her silence. I met with Autumn in a coffee shop far from our usual circles. She was destroyed by guilt. Her hands were cold, her voice broken. "I'm sorry," she repeated. "I knew it was wrong. I needed the money, and he seemed so sure of himself." I took a deep breath. "I need one thing from you," I said. "You will testify officially." "Yes," she replied. "I'll tell the truth under oath." The embryologist, upon learning that Autumn had kept records and that the donor was cooperating, also decided to collaborate to reduce the consequences. His bravery wasn't noble, it was fear. For me, that was enough. The hardest call was to my mom. 2 years of silence can fit into a single word: shame. "Mom, you were right. I'm sorry." I expected an "I told you so." She just asked, "What do you need, my love?" In a short time, she connected me with a divorce lawyer and people at the specialized fraud prosecutor's office. My lawyer reviewed everything and was clear. There was enough to proceed, and the clause he wanted to use against me could now be turned against him, because he was the one who had been unfaithful and had orchestrated the plan. Weeks later, I suggested to Sterling that we have a pre-birth celebration at the family home with close family and friends. His eyes lit up. He wanted an audience, witnesses, a stage for his story. "What a great idea," he said. "I'll help." "No," I smiled. "You rest. I'll take care of it." And I did. I organized the evidence. My lawyer was present. Nolan and Autumn were ready to speak. The other victim, Georgia, was willing to confirm her story. The agents were waiting for the right moment. The afternoon was beautiful on the outside. The garden was pristine, with tables, soft music, and sparkling glasses. Inside, I was a tightly wound spring. Sterling moved through the crowd as if he owned the place. He smiled, hugged people, and placed his hand on my belly for photos, playing the perfect father-to-be. And just as I knew he would, he suggested the DNA test in front of everyone, his voice loud, as if it were a sweet gesture. "What if we do a DNA test," he said, "and frame it for the baby's room? It would be a precious memory. We could even look at it here today as part of the celebration." There were murmurs of approval. His mother put her hand to her chest. His father smiled with pride. I pretended to hesitate just long enough for him to think the script was his. Then I walked to the microphone. I felt the world go silent, as if the entire garden were holding its breath. "Thank you for coming," I said. "This afternoon is for celebrating, but also for telling the truth." I pulled out the folder. "My husband wants a DNA test. So do I. Here it is." I explained everything without shouting, calmly, with documents. My husband bribed clinic staff to switch his sample for a donor's without my knowledge or consent. He planned to accuse me of infidelity to collect a multi-million peso penalty, take my assets, and destroy my name. I showed the records and receipts. Nolan confirmed the payment and the deceit. Autumn identified herself as the bribed nurse and said she had already given her statement. Then I added the rest: the embezzlement from his firm, the gambling debts, the affair, and the prior incident with Georgia. Sterling tried to interrupt with that voice he used to make me doubt myself. "Lacey, you're confused. It's the pregnancy." His mother, her voice breaking, asked him if it was true. He opened his mouth but couldn't lie as easily in front of a mountain of proof. Then the agents walked in. "Sterling is under arrest for his probable involvement in crimes related to fraud and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent and to speak with your lawyer." They handcuffed him right there, in front of his family, his friends, and the story he had rehearsed for years. As they led him away, he begged me to think of our family. I looked at him and replied, "I already have." Afterward came the silence and then air. My mom hugged me. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "Your grandmother would be too." Sterling was ordered to be held in preventive custody due to flight risk. His debts and his lenders made him unpredictable. His assistant disappeared the next day. The firm confirmed the embezzlement and filed charges. Georgia gave her testimony. The file grew, and with it, the case. The divorce moved quickly. The clause he wanted to use against me ended up being turned against him. Even if his pride wanted a fight, he had nothing left to fight with. Everything he claimed to have was borrowed, invented, or stolen. My baby was born months later, healthy, perfect, and innocent. Some people asked if I would look for Nolan. I didn't. He didn't want to be a father, and I didn't need him to be one. My son would have love, presence, and a family that knows how to stand on its own feet. I learned something simple. Family isn't a test, a piece of paper, or a result. Family is who stays, who shows up, who chooses you every day. My mom chose me even when I didn't deserve it, and I chose my baby without any conditions. One morning, sitting in the kitchen of the old family house, I watched the light come through windows that have seen generations of women live. Outside, the garden was blooming as if it knew nothing of betrayal. I put my hand on my belly and felt a movement. Sterling wanted to take everything from me, my money, my reputation, my peace. The only thing he managed to do was remind me who I am. I come from a line of strong women. We don't break. We bend, we adapt, we survive. And when someone tries to burn us down, we rise up and build something better.